Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to SP Reviews, where today we have ourselves a track by X, LOS MUSIC X, Louisiana's Finest, and Four Eyes, titled Too Much Fire. And if we switch over to here, this track is off of the LP titled About Time. So we are going to listen through this track from start till finish, and we're going to hear what you think. Let's go. Okay. Oh wow, there's a lot to take in immediately, isn't there? So let's just break down the intro here. We've got the sound of fire burning, some car horns or something like that, that bar, you know, the choir vocals, the nice lady vocals up in the upper range there. What else are we going to have?
Soul food make you pay attention. ADHD in the mission. I just want y'all to see the vision. Too much pepper in the sauce. If you talk, don't drip, close your mouth. Yeah, everybody wanna be a boss. $1 million, no days off. Too much fire.
Some of the cleanest production I've heard in a while. Like, it's nice and loud without pumping. You know, the reason I had to turn it down is because I was like, whoa, hang on, if I had left these headphones up for a minute. And in a genre like hip-hop and rap, it's helpful, especially if you want it to resonate on any kind of sound system, you know? The vocals have been double-tracked as well. They're nice and resonant within the mix without being obnoxious. It's fantastic.
For you. Used to dance to the pots and pans until the grease pop. Los gon' wash your hands, it's time to eat now. That's what I'm talking about, let's put the sweet out. Kitchen on fire, presented by the meat mouth. Unk on the pig, gotta call him Peely Wee Straw. Flirting with some whopping, coughing on that Kumar. Couple red cups and a paper plate, po' boy. Eating like we eat, man, you ain't hearing no noise. Broken.
These swagger with this, not only in terms of the vocal performance there, which we'll get into as we go along, but also just to work with the electric guitars on that right side of the stereo field there, and the bass rolling in that low end there, and that major resonance that we have in the second half of each of these motifs, the way they loop, it's stunning. We're not sleeping on it. The introduction of those hi-hats as we go along, as well as a nice extra layer of goodness in there. I'm actually really happy with it.
Let this moment last forever. Music for your soul, let it put it back together. Like wifey did my heart when I met her. One fist in the air and a pistol on the side. Had to open up the verse and let it ride. Since dying ain't an option for the night. Raw paper and a 7 at 11:11. With a higher state of mind synchronized with the heavens. Your kitchen don't.
Highest state of mind synchronized with the heavens. I like lyrics like that, along with the fact that he's talking about his wife healing his heart and stuff like that. There's a vulnerability there, but there's also a sense of confidence, like it's deserved the success. You know, we're getting somewhere. There's just too much fire going on there. We're making too many gains. I dig it. It's like a positive appreciation and self-awareness there is coming through in the music. And I think that's where we have that major turn harmonically within the motif in that second half. It's stunning, man. It's really dope.
Soul food make you pay attention. ADHD in the mission. I just want y'all to see the vision. Too much pepper in the sauce. If you talk, don't drip, close your mouth. Yeah, everybody wanna be a boss. $1 million, no days off. Too much.
Let's just take a step back to appreciate how slick that hook is as well. Going from the rapping to the clean vocals and then adding that extra harmony on top there with the near falsetto there is gorgeous, dude. I mean, it's pumping, but it's not breathing. Again, the limiting compression on the mastering chain is splendid. Okay, we got the whispering as well.
With the attitude, Radishin Rick Rude. We simply not the same, cause I spit truth. Tapping pockets in the game just to get food. Say you wanna pop smoke, but you can't. Woo! Man, go ahead, check the speaker. Please believe her, you don't want my feedback to greet you. Mama, see her rubbing both eyes quick together just to be a mojado. Caliente for my Peter, Mr. Fireman, fire spitter.
And it's not just the fact that we can rap, there's this attitude there, this persona, this character, this charisma. You know, these are not rappers or musicians. It's definitely not their first time on the mic. They are so confident, they know how to emote and display themselves almost like so effortlessly. You can kind of imagine the kind of person they are. It's so so believable. It makes you want to hear more.
Fire burner, call me Fire Marshal Bill. I'm your fire learner, about to learn you something good. Become a top burner, show you how you turn ice to stone. Bunsen burner, that's a hot rock. Give me the beat without a stop clock.
Nice use of repeaters as well.
With no hot block, 6 million Celsius, more than a hot spot. Stepping in my kitchen, my oven, will get you clocked out.
Too much fire in the kitchen.
Okay.
Soul food, make you pay attention. ADHD in a mission. I just want y'all to see the vision. Too much pepper in the sauce. If you talk, don't drip, close your mouth. Yeah, everybody wanna be a boss. $1 million, no days off. Too much fire for you.
I like the space that we have here after this hook motif there, you know. I like how we're talking about cooking in the kitchen and the soul food and too much spice in the sauce and stuff like that. I dig it. It's a nice way of talking about what we're cooking up with our music. You know, there's a bit of edginess there, etc., but it's still delicious. The dynamic range of this, knowing that after the intensity of that hook, you know, it's not like we're listening to some sort of like grindcore or something like that, don't get me wrong, but it's full on. There's a lot going on there, a lot to appreciate with these different vocal layers. And like the organ there, that's and the bass and the drums and everything like that, all this kind of keys or
flamethrower. No, I'm hot, even though they won't admit everything I write. 800 degrees Fahrenheit, very tight, so compact. I spit a terabyte, very white bass in my voice. The flow deep, dude so weak. He think he cooking with no heat. Album straight Tempur-Pedic, talking about don't sleep.
Nah, fool, that's Ja Rule slinging that goat meat.
I love the fact that we left that vocal modulation until the final verse, the final part, and then they try and do the same thing again. It's like, no, you had your chance for that first impression, that kind of, oh wow, look at that, you know. You can't really get away with doing it twice unless there's different situations or different like parts. And so I don't know, it's more effective when you kind of don't just throw everything at the listener within the first 30 seconds.
At the same time, cause anybody could rap, but see they can't rhyme with that 4 eyes design off of the grapevine. Shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Hey, I'm burning up 3rd degree for a long blaze. Did you check that dough for heat on that backdraft for ladder 49? We fortified, horrified when Johnny Blaze is going for a ride. Cauterized slice just like a lightsaber wound, making room, regeneration after the baby boom. Crazy tune, musical madness for a savage. Substandard dirt smokers below the average. Ass backwards, whack rappers, a straight clown shoes. Ultra Beast United, we make the ground move. Stampede running the game, who ain't got nothing? Every verse I drop a box of stovetop stuffing. Too much.
The wordplay, man. The creativity there, the imagery of like the ground moving, for example, the kitchen, the fire and the 800 degrees Fahrenheit and everything like that, the connection between the different rappers involved in their verses and trying to create that chemistry between them.
In the kitchen, soul food, make you pay attention. ADHD in a mission. I just want y'all to see the vision. Too much pepper in the sauce. If you talk, don't drip, close your mouth. Yeah, everybody wanna be a boss. $1 million, no days off. Too much fire for you.
Too much fire for you. Straight up, man. Laying down the word of the land. I mean that genuinely. These guys, it's been a while since I've heard rappers come in and sound this professional. You know, we'll finish out the rest of the song and then we'll do the conclusion, but I think this is going to be a positive review, to be honest. Because this is my conclusion of this track by LOS MUSIC X-P.A.T, Louisiana's Finest, and 4 Eyes, titled Too Much Fire. Again, I'm not here to say nice things about the musicians that I review. I think the song, you know, as I've mentioned throughout this review, is about a group of people who are very confident in their abilities as rappers. They're creating music that, you know, is straight fire, and they're happy to tell people about it. They're self-aware. I think, more importantly, they're aware that it might just be too much for people, you know, to take, you know. And it's part and parcel with the rap and hip-hop genre. And you don't always get people who can walk the talk, so to speak, but the flow, the articulation, the wordplay, the creativity, and the staying power of the motif and accompaniment behind all of this, I believe this is people not only talking about who they are as rappers, what they've gone through to get to where they are, and how they prepare their verses and everything like that. But it's just getting the different angles of the different individuals, which is why I think each of the members got a verse, or each of the musicians involved got a verse, which I think is great. It always saddens me when I hear tracks within this genre and there's like 2 verses of one musician and then there's just like a half verse of another, and it's like, you know, even if they're a feature, you know, like why not at least like just have them have the chorus then or something, and you can do all the verses. You know, having someone do all the choruses and 2 of the verses it just seems like a shame to me, especially when you can get these different perspectives from different musicians. And I like it. You know, they had slightly different ways of rapping, but they were also stylistically cohesive. What I do know is obviously that the flow, the characterization between them, I think they exemplified themselves well. I was never put off or affronted by any of it. I think that's important because, you know, even if you're a massive fan of this type of music and you sort of subscribe to a lot of stuff that they're talking about, first impressions are incredibly important. The rhythm of the different flows and bars that we had throughout this track, alongside the clarity of the vocals, both in terms of the recording and like the way they actually rap and deliver the lines. You know, we vary the pacing of it a little bit. There's a bit of vocal modulation like in the last verse occasionally, but the power of it outside of the repeaters as well, which fill up the space a little bit when we need to sort of change things up in the second half of it. The power of this music resides in, again, the personality of each of the musicians. Having a different verse, you don't become like kind of disinterested. Even if you don't necessarily like the verse from one person, you have 2 others to listen to and to look forward to, and I appreciate that. I think it's very considerate, and I hope to hear a lot more hip-hop like this in future, because while I don't necessarily mind someone carrying a track by themselves, variety is good, as long as everyone involved is up to the task, and that's of course the risk that you work with having collaborations. But luckily for us, all 3 members here did a fantastic job. And yeah, it was good to get to know them a little better. It makes me want to hear more from them, and I think, again, that is a successful first impression, if from the lyrics and the rapping alone. The clean vocals as well, and the chorus sections were confident and comfortable, and they had this kind of, yeah, no, you know you're here, you know you're listening to this, you know we know what we're talking about kind of groove, and I really dig that. Again, it's off-putting when I listen to people who talk of a confidence that they cannot justify, and I do not believe this was the case here. The motif, the musical sort of, idea, and the structure that accompanied it, you know, you had one main concept here where you worked between 1 or 2 different bass notes, but the power more in the layering and arrangement of these different elements here. You had, you had a lot of different instruments here. You had little guitar parts and the electric bass and the drums and the organ thing going on here, and it's not just these various instruments and when they came in and when they decided to step off a little bit and allowing space occasionally for there to be a perceived difference in loudness and dynamic range. It's also the Foley, like the sound of the fire and the horns and everything like that. It's these bits of that make it more of a sort of cinematic, theatrical experience. And I believe that elevates the time listening to it. You know, you're not just hearing someone sort of spit on a mic for 5 minutes. You're hearing, you kind of makes you think of the fire, etc., you know, that they're talking about. And it's these little things that may not seem like something you should put in there, but when people do, it's just that X factor, you know? Except, I suppose, it would have been just as good with or without that Foley. That's it. We didn't necessarily have a lot of complexity to particular individual instruments. But again, the power of arrangements and compositions like this is that if you know the strength of the various instruments that you're working with, what you can do is get them to do a thing like that 8th note groove with the drums. And then those little hi-hat bits that we had occasionally where like we knew we just needed a bit of high-end accenting going on there in the frequency spectrum, and the hi-hats were the thing for it. And we didn't introduce everything at once either. We took our time with layering in these ingredients into the mix, which is not something that's necessarily revolutionary, but it's a fundamental, and they managed to nail that. I think finally the production, the recording and mixing and mastering was sensational. It was very loud. I had a look over at my OBS on the other monitor I have over here. It's one of the few situations where I see the desktop audio, which is like the output for the song I'm listening to, go right into the red. So this is a loud track, and that's not a bad thing. It's one of the few situations where I've had music this loud come through that is nonetheless worth listening to, because it was not only the quality of the vocal recordings, but also the quality and the caliber of the different other instruments in the mix, like the tone of the guitars and the way they were EQ'd and stacked alongside the bass and the drums and everything else, and those key parts. And also the panning and effects chains, and applied to like the Foley bits and all these other beautiful things. And I say beautiful, it's a weird thing because I don't usually associate the words beautiful a lot of the hip hop and rap I listen to, because a lot of it is kind of brutal, or it's kind of smooth, or it's kind of sexy or whatever. But it was kind of, in a weird way, it was kind of gorgeous, because you had like these reverse takes of some synth parts in those verse parts, and I can just imagine as an instrumental it would kind of sound sort of cyberpunkish, kind of like futuristic, and it's just a really interesting turn harmonically to go through. And it loops so well into itself, but they aren't typically two chords that would go together. And to know how to get the instruments to not only behave well and layer onto each other and amalgamate like that, but to also mix them so they're so well glued, and the mix itself is impressive. Again, if it sounds like I'm being overly positive, I'm not. I'm just talking about the stuff that I enjoyed, and this is part of the conclusion. I think that again, I mentioned that it was a loud track, so you know that you got to a few stages of compression and then the limiting going on here. Despite some of the synthetic parts that we had within this final master, I don't necessarily feel like it was a kind of contemporary sound. It was almost had that kind of old school kind of vibe to it from like the 90s and 2000s that I was familiar with sort of growing up, and I love it for that, because I think that if you'd stuck it like a sort of like a more common 808 or some kind of cutish, like there's limits to what you can necessarily push into a song like this instrumentally. And it was just, as a final note, great that we not only managed to make it nice and loud and allow for breathing room for the instruments and not crush the dynamic range, but also we didn't screw up the coloration of it. It's a very complete sounding song, and I'm very happy with what I've heard today from LOS MUSIC X.P.A.T, Louisiana's Finest, and 4 Eyes with Too Much Fire. But thank you for watching this review, and I hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go and show these artists, musicians, some love via their various social medias, and I think they've got a website you can check this stuff out at. And stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next review. Spiderhands out.